the other big issue that we haven't talked about, which is a real wrench in this whole thing, is, of course, what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon, and now Iran is involved as well. So just to give everybody some updates on that, Lebanon's foreign minister, Abdallah Abu Habib, told CNN that Hassan Nasrallah, who is the leader of Hezbollah, he had just agreed to a 21-day ceasefire just before he was assassinated by Israel, which reminds me of what happened when Israel bombed Tehran. Right? When it was the head of the political wing of Hamas who was the chief negotiator, and Israel violated the territorial sovereignty of Iran, bombed the capital city to kill the person they were theoretically negotiating a peace deal with. Gee, I wonder if Israel wants peace.
Who had also agreed to a ceasefire.
Who had also agreed to a ceasefire. And then we also have this news. This is kind of scary as well. Israel bombed a Russian airbase on the coast of Syria. And so now you have a situation where, like, Russia is fucking pissed off at Israel for bombing their airbase in Syria. They've bombed in Syria proper as well. You have, and the U.S. media, of course, is making this all worse because you have CBS apparently during the debate. I missed this live, but CBS during the debate apparently said that Iran could develop a nuclear weapon in 1 to 2 weeks, which is a total and complete, utter fucking lie. You have Reuters is reporting that there was a U.S. resident from Dearborn, Michigan, who was in Lebanon, who was killed by an American bomb dropped by Israel. So you have all these things that are happening, and we've all said it 100 times, but it is at the point where it is inconceivable. It's incomprehensible. I can't wrap my mind around how this can proceed. For the love of God, pull the fucking leash on Israel. For the love of God. And I know you guys actually have an interesting theory on that. Tell everybody your theory as to why you think we are so far gone on the issue of Israel right now.
I was speculating the other day that it's possible.
Gavin terrified me when he said this. I was like, tweet this out. This is a fucking hot take.
Yeah, basically just that they're threatening to use their nuclear arsenal if we stop giving them weapons. You know, they're going to say we have to protect ourselves somehow. We have to protect ourselves against Iran, the country you've already admitted over and over again is the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the entire world, or whatever their stupid line is about it. So they've already conditioned the American public to accept that. Oh, yeah, we have to protect ourselves. Of course, that's why we have these nukes in the first place. And if the U.S. does try to pull that leash, if it does try to cut off the weapons, then, I mean, that's an even bigger catastrophe on our hands that we certainly don't want to have to deal with. So, I mean, it's definitely possible. Do you think there's any truth to that, guys?
At this point, I was telling Crystal the other day, at this point, I was like, I can see it. Obviously, I have no idea. I have no evidence. But in terms of trying to explain how we're so far gone, because the only other option is Biden is not only the world's most hardcore Zionist, but also just totally fucking senile and gone, right? And the most corrupt.
Half a can of Campbell's soup up there, bro.
Bro, it's like, because at this point, it's like, there was an article, they said, Biden expressed himself, oh, I know that they're trying to get Trump elected. I know that Netanyahu is trying to rat fuck us. I know that that's why he's doing what he's doing. And it's like, if you know that, why would you not pull the leash and cut off the weapons, or at least threaten to cut off the weapons and get his fucking ass in line? Why would you not do that? And he hasn't done it. And so now I'm open to any fucking theories.
Well, the other possibility is that he's pissed off about being pulled from the ticket and wants Kamala to lose and wants Trump to win.
Oh, man. Well, there's
or
no
doesn't
way.
care.
Or doesn't care. But
I think he might not even have the cognitive ability to care. I think at this point, guys, we've been making weekend Biden jokes for so long. Guys, in the primary against Bernie Sanders, when we were the Vanguard.blog, Gavin and I were making little articles with Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar carrying Joe Biden across the finish line, weekend at Bernie style. So I think that's part of it. But the other thing that I wanted to throw your guys' way, right, because it's something that both horrifies me and also just makes me reevaluate how I look at American politics. So Gavin and I, we bring it up as much as we can. We're regular dudes from the Midwest. We live in Kansas City. All of our friends don't care about politics nearly as much as we do, right? They're regular people. They'll show up and vote, but they don't want to talk about this shit all the time. And it's a good barometer for what's reaching the American people, because what was it? The morning of the debate, I was literally like, I was in a fucking mess, man. Like Gavin and I were pacing around. We were in our respective homes, just like, it was not good. We were like, we have to cancel the show that we had planned for today. The vibes are horrible.
Because of the bombing in Tel Aviv. Yeah.
Yes, I want to be sick. I don't know what's going to happen after this, right? And then I have to call my boss because I help run a cocktail room in Kansas City. And so I'm talking to the GM, Kate, and I'm like, oh my God, it's a fucking crazy day for the Vanguard. Like, what do you need me to do at the bar? Like, what do we have to get knocked out for the day? And she's like, oh my God, what's happening? And I was like, oh, just escalations with the war. And like, Kate is a smart woman. Like, this is not a shot at her. This is not a dig. She says, what war? Like and I have to be like, oh, right. Not everybody follows this every day. They don't think America's at war. I think that there are so many voters that we don't consider. They, as callous as it is, they don't have the capacity to learn, care, or think about what's happening in our foreign policy. To them, it's no different than their whole life. We were in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, Syria, Yemen. To them, it's just all part of the machine. So that's both like, okay, so these escalations might not work in the form of an October surprise that we've seen historically, but it's also going to be a nightmare for anybody to do anything because it just gives the Democrats complete cover to keep increasing the suffering, to just not real Netanyahu back at all, because they're looking at all the polling and people are like, I don't care about any of this.
I would say I understand that theory, but the issue is there are Muslim Americans, there are Arab Americans, there are young voters, and there are Democratic base voters. And all of those groups genuinely care about this. And when you're looking at an election as close as what we're looking at, you don't need that big of numbers to stay home in order to swing the result. So I think you make a point which is compelling for a large swath of American voters. But the idea that like, well, foreign policy just has no impact on the election, that I can't see. And I also thought it was bogus. During the Bush years, you had I think it was 2006, you had a giant wave of Democrats get elected, and it was because the public was really tired of the war. And it was also, again, people might intuitively tie these things together, like, hey, my road has 1,000 potholes, but you're sending billions of dollars to Iraq or wherever. Fucking enough.
Well, that's where Helene comes into it too.
Right, yeah.
With the $750 payments.
Slightly different take from you guys on that one, because they actually did everything they were supposed to do behind the scenes. They did the emergency declaration. They got FEMA going. Like, they did all of those things. The only problem is the optics of it. They didn't do the photo ops of being on the ground.
That's what I'm talking about, the optics.
But that matters.
I actually totally agree with you, Kyle.
It's incumbent on us to say what happened. Like, they actually did all the things they were supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Because I see the right bogus lying about it. Like, they didn't do anything. And it's like, that's just not true. You're just wrong. Yeah,
I do agree with that. I said that on the show the other day. I was like, it looks like they actually are doing things. It just doesn't look like they're doing things enough to, care, for people to care. But yeah, I do think that is definitely true, with it being a close enough election for it to really matter on the margins with the foreign policy stuff. Although I do agree with Zach that I don't think it's something that's really motivating your average voter to vote in this election cycle. In 2006, Kyle, like you were talking about with the midterms, I do think it mattered a lot more because more Americans were going overseas, more Americans were dying in those wars. So it felt like more tangible to your average person. They were like, oh, this is affecting me. This is something that is obviously affecting my community. So therefore I wanted to stop. With this war, I do agree that right now it's still regional enough and it's still kind of contained within the Middle East enough that I don't think a lot of people really know or care or understand the significance of it. Like, we were talking about this, we understand that Israel is basically us. Like, that's our base in the region. It's our outpost. It's our military base, whatever you want to call it. It's basically the 51st state. It's what we jokingly call it at the Vanguard. It's like, it's kind of a Pearl Harbor level event, in my opinion. It could be. We'll see. I hope not. But, this Iranian bombing of Tel Aviv, because it just opens the door. It gives Israel exactly the excuse that they've been looking for to straight up start a war with Iran. And again, I think this is one of those things where we're going to be talking about it for several months before anyone else is. Similar thing happened with COVID, where it's like, if you were really paying attention to the news, you knew about a month before the general public that lockdowns were coming. You're like, I see what's happening in the rest of the world.
San Diego.
Yeah, a lot of people were still in denial when I was like, hey, bro, like, life is about to change forever. And they were like, no, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. In the same way I'm starting to get a similar vibe where it's like, no one's talking about this. You go outside, everyone's pretending like everything's fine. But I'm like, bro, you don't understand the significance of Iran genuinely carrying out this attack, this strike on Tel Aviv, bombing the shit out of our military base in the region, absolutely Israel's going to take the excuse to try to go to war with Iran. And who knows if we're going to be able to stop them. I don't know if it's going to matter by the election, but soon enough, we're going to be talking about it. The people will know.
Yeah, we're on the brink of 40,000 troops already there. Sorry to cut you off, Crystal.
No,
but like we're on the brink of
that's what
actual
I was going
war
to say
with
is
Iran.
like, you know, that's assuming that things, I think there's some merit to your argument, assuming that things stay the way they are, but they're not going to stay the way they are.
Yes.
And we could very easily end up with a situation. I mean, Iran is saying, hey, we consider the U.S. to be part of this, and we're looking at U.S. assets to strike if Israel retaliates. So you end up with some dead American troops. And Trump can lean into his, like, this didn't happen under me. You know, this is all this chaos is under the Biden-Harris administration. And then I said this to Kyle, like, you know, I don't love to pull the identity card all the time, but we've never had a female commander-in-chief. So if that, like, wartime footing becomes more front of mind, people have seen many white men be commander-in-chief. They have never seen a black woman be commander-in-chief. And I think that could, I think it could be a factor as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, if this breaks out into a hot war that involves U.S. troops, I think that has to change, you know, the analysis.
The calculus,
completely.
yeah.
And I think the hope and praying is that, you know, that just, I don't know, it doesn't happen. I guess if I'm going to just try and spin this with more copium and say that at least historically, if you look back at the last couple of major hot wars that the United States has been involved with, you have to go back to Vietnam for when we, you know, intentionally swapped out a president in the middle of it, right? During the Bush years, even though Iraq was really unpopular and we'd already invaded Afghanistan and George Bush looked, you know, historically incompetent. He was a laughingstock of the country. People did double down and support him. Now, this is obviously not a perfect analogy because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris aren't the same person.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point,
you know,
though.
There's also the sense that, like, hey, we don't want to change up our leadership too much when we're already in the midst of this operation. I don't know how middle America voters think, just, you know, spitballing.
Yeah, I'm really, like, I think it's very confounding the way Kamala's responding to all of this. I kind of figured when she became the nominee or whenever anyone replaced Biden, they would just be able to kind of inherit more of a clean slate and just talk about peace, just talk about a ceasefire. And I don't know. I felt like it seemed easier now that she actually is the nominee. It seems like she doesn't really have a coherent message on where she stands. Like, it's not really clear if she's a peace candidate or not. She doesn't talk about peace. She'll bring up a ceasefire, but in the statements after the bombing of Tel Aviv by Iran, it's not like they're promising peace. I wish they were. I wish they were saying, like, you know, I know this seems scary, but trust me, we're working on getting towards peace. All they're talking about is, oh, trust us, we're going to defend Israel. We're going to protect Israel. We're going to, you know, give them whatever they want, essentially. And it's like, I don't think that's what most people want to hear. I think even if people like Israel, even if people think positively of it and think, oh, yeah, I know some Jewish folks that vacation in Israel. It seems like a nice country, whatever. They don't want to go to war over it. They don't want to lose their son over it. They don't want to sacrifice their future and global security over it. I just think it's crazy not to at least promise people peace when we're talking about this stuff and act like that's the goal instead of just unconditional support for this.
Create some distance from Biden.
Yeah,
like,
but
people
she
want
doesn't disagree.
you
I mean, that's the problem. The problem
create
is
distance from Biden. It's like, here's an issue where you could really do that and you really should do that. And it's like, nope.
The problem is she doesn't disagree with him. The most she can muster is some both sides bullshit rhetoric. That's the most she can muster. And we're at a point now where Israel is saying terrifying things. They're saying, we're going to respond. We're going to attack all of Iran's nuclear sites, and we're going to attack all of their oil refineries. And then Iran, in turn, has said, if you do that, we are bombing every U.S. base military installation and all of your oil resources right back. Even if it's in Saudi Arabia, no matter where it is, we're going to bomb all your shit. So this is what's already happening. Israel is saying, we are going to do this. And Iran is saying, if you do that, we are going to do this. And what they said is the next time we attack, it won't be so nice. This time there were like fucking 0 casualties and it was a virtue signal strike. Yeah, we attacked the base where you get a lot of U.S. weapons sent to Israel, which is a good thing. You actually want, that's a place where you should, right?
Right.
They bombed there and they were like, next time it won't be so nice. And so the thing that I'm worried about is, like, we're already there. Like, we're already in the place. And it's shit or get off the pot time. And my fear is that there's nobody behind the scenes being like, let's let's not go in this direction.
Let's 86 the shitting. Yeah, let's get off the pod and go.
Exactly.
I mean, hopefully Kamala is at least, and the Democrats, hopefully they're at least interested enough in winning that they can be like, yo, Israel, enough now, stop. Like, we get it. You want to return fire, you want to strike back, but this has to end right now.
But there's just no evidence of there's just no evidence of it, and it drives me crazy.
There's not. I'm just saying, like, you'd think that even from a selfish, like, I want to win this election, there shouldn't be a war going on the month before people start voting. You'd think that would be enough to motivate them. But that's where my theory about Israel and the nukes come in. I'm like, how are you this cucked? How are you this cucked to Israel?
Right? That's stupid. I know.
Are they literally threatening to annihilate the world unless you do what they want? This is the most abusive relationship of all time.
They don't have video of Kamala at a Diddy party or an Epstein party with some underage girl. We know that. I mean, maybe they have it on Biden, but they don't have it on Kamala.
Maybe.
Right? So, like, why?
Yeah, that's another thing, the blackmail rabbit hole. A lot of people are really convinced that everyone's blackmailed. And that,
I mean, it's plausible at this point, right? Just like your theory is plausible about the nukes, that is fucking plausible, because I've never seen people so fucking cucked in my entire life, and we're talking about millions of lives at stake.
I mean, I also think Biden really outsourced his policy to that Brett McGurk character who's like died in the wool neocon. The reporting is that they not only were like okay with the Lebanon invasion and attacks, but they like encouraged it because they think this is an opportunity to remake the Middle East.
They overrode the CIA and the Pentagon.
That's right.
And the CIA was like, "What the fuck are you idiots doing?"
And they're like, "No."
The Pentagon was like, "What are you doing?"
No, we're going to spread democracy. I swear it'll work out this time, guys. And the Israelis aren't just talking about bombing nuclear sites. They're talking about regime change. I mean, former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett went on CNN and was like, we're going to give a great gift to the Iranian people and help them rise up against this cruel regime by bombing their oil sites and decimating their economy. He described it as a gift from the, quote, Jewish people, which is disgustingly anti-Semitic, by the way, to like conflate all Jewish people with this genocidal and abhorrent foreign policy. But yeah, it's dark.
It's going to be like Libya. It's going to be like Iraq. It's going to be like all those. It's going to be horrible.
Hard. Even if you think, as I do, that these people are basically immoral, to just wrap your head around for your own personal self-interest, you're doing the wrong thing. But I think, I don't know what's going on with Biden. I don't know how much is going on there at all.
Nothing.
I think with Kamala, she just has this very cautious, like, the thing to do in Washington has always been to stand with Israel, and it'll ruffle the feathers if I, distance myself from Biden. So she's literally got this script that she's memorized that anytime she gets asked about this, it's the same thing. I stand with Israel. They have a right to defend themselves. Let's not forget October 7th. And maybe we'll talk a little bit. We'll
even
Tim
spare
Walz some word for the Palestinians. Oh, he clearly doesn't know or care anything
he's not a foreign
about
policy
it.
guy.
He doesn't know anything about it, obviously, and also just like tried to memorize the script and kind of failed at that.
Bernie is more confident on foreign policy than Tim Walz, and foreign policy was not Bernie's strength either, right?
Yeah. But
it's weird about Tim Walz because he wrote like a thesis about genocide or something, and in the context
he did. That's
of
right.
Judaism.
I forgot about that.
He defended the uncommitted people early on.
Yeah. I do feel like he's more of a thinker in the foreign policy regard than people give him credit for, but he's just not allowed to give his actual opinion on the subject matter when he's out there as a part of the Kamala campaign. So I have no idea, what he thinks about it. Clearly, he's not really allowed to talk about it. I do get the sense that Kamala just doesn't give a fuck about foreign policy. I don't think I've ever seen her talk about it, not when she was running for president back in 2019 and 2020, not while she was vice president. It seems like Biden, he really does care about like NATO. He gave that stupid NATO press conference after the disastrous
NATO, all about NATO.
Right. But Kamala, it's like, I literally don't know what your opinion is on pretty much any foreign policy matter. I barely get the sense that she really cares about domestic policy either, to be honest. I've always said that Kamala Harris seems like she would be better suited in like the corporate world than the political world.
Yeah.
It seems like she'd make a great like VP of like MasterCard or like, one of those credit card companies, something like that. She seems like she's a great, she has executive energy, but more in the corporate world than the political world. So I get the sense that, she just doesn't care. I mean, she might not even know enough to care. She's just like, whatever they're telling me. And I do get the sense too, unfortunately, that that's a increasingly common theme with U.S. presidents, where it's like they just kind of turn over the sticks, they turn over the controls to the Pentagon and the people in charge of the deep state when it comes to foreign policy stuff, because they know most Americans don't really care anyway. Why would you expend all of this political capital trying to get something done like the withdrawal from Afghanistan if no one's going to reward you for it politically? The media is just going to shit all over you, and then voters aren't even going to care by election day. Might as well just turn it over.
So much.
I know.
It kills me so much, the Afghanistan point, because this administration went from pulling out of Afghanistan, mega-based, and massively reducing the drone war, mega-based. They went from that to arming and funding and backing a genocide relentlessly. And to your point, I didn't really consider it from that perspective, but it's true. When the whole media apparatus turned on you and yelled at you and made your polling numbers drop when you did the good thing of withdrawing from Afghanistan, that now disincentivizes any U.S. president from ever ending any fucking war ever again.
Absolutely.
And I remember screaming from the top of my lungs, let's defend this. Let's defend him, because we want to make it so if you do the things we want you to do, we wanted you to get out of Afghanistan, we'll fucking defend it. And I remember being furious at Tulsi Gabbard, who made a big deal about pulling out of Afghanistan, and then when Biden did it, she was fucking nowhere to be found. The only
Not only was she nowhere to be found, she went on Tucker Carlson's show.
Right,
and criticized it.
And it's like, fuck you, just fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Yeah, apparently, it's a puppet state, and it's a house of cards, and it collapsed immediately as soon as we pull out of there. We knew that was the case. It would be the case when we pulled out. It would have been the case if we pulled out in 2048. We have to say, it's still the right thing to get out of there. It drove me crazy.
Enough is enough.
Yeah. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.